Hello, fam. We are here together to do what? Watch another great reaction to a show that we watched called Breaking Bad. And together, all here as one, we have my best friend, Meader. Meader, how are you doing?
I'm here too.
Yes, you are, and I feel like I'm starting a cult today. So, to go along with that theme,
Mhm.
I think we're all in the cult of meth, the cult of bad, the breaking. Can you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I felt like I've been in that cult for at least 20 or 30 years.
And I don't know where this intro is going. It's kind of a disaster at this point. So let me just tease something. Next week, we're gonna have a special guest on the reaction. Who's it gonna be? I mean, Meter, you'll be very surprised.
I'm really excited. Can I speculate?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it God? Did you get God?
Well, God and I kind of broke up.
Whoa.
It was going strong, and then I found out at some point he cheated on me with this girl, knocked her up. I
Yep.
mean,
That makes sense.
yeah, it was kind of shitty of him. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys could still have a good working relationship, like a
uh,
professional one.
yeah, I suppose. Do you think it'd be worth it? Because that was another potential guest, but yeah,
It's not God. Okay.
no, no, that one's difficult. But I'll give you two more guesses.
Um, is it me?
Well, you are a very special guest, but
Uh-huh.
it is you in a way, but it's not you. I mean, you'll be
Okay.
here, you're a special guest, but you're not the special guest I was referring to.
All right. Is it Arby's roast beef sandwich?
Why didn't I think of that? That would have been a great guest to have on, but
Yeah.
okay, that'll be the week
You
after.
said it, just if you set up a camera throughout the whole reaction and had it up in the corner, and it was just an Arby's roast beef sandwich, and the title of the episode was an Arby's roast beef sandwich reacts to Breaking Bad. Million clicks, no question.
I mean, at least 1 million, right?
I'd watch the whole thing. I want to see how it reacts.
See, the only thing with that is it spin off all these copycats, and then it just loses its taste.
Or Arby's would sue.
Oof, yeah. So gotta be careful with that. But if you guys want to watch along, I mean, there probably won't be a timer, so you guys are out of luck. Just kind of watch the Clip Picks reaction in the description. So click there and do the howdy ho ho. We'll get into this reaction now.
That's
All right, that was another exciting episode of a show that we watched called Breaking Bad. Now, I think this episode was definitely a bit of a setup episode, but I think it's also more so setup than pushing things forward. I think that's the big theme here, and we kind of see a lot of things like it's kind of like a ratchet, I guess. Like like how with a ratchet you can kind of go and kind of move forward, but you can't go back. That's kind of what it feels like. There are things that have been pushed forward that you can't go back on. And that's kind of what the Skylar Ted storyline, a lot going on with that. The Walt storyline with everything that's happened there. What Jesse's been doing. I mean, just a lot of things that are like being pushed in, but no way coming back to where we were before. Whereas I think the previous episode or two was kind of like people trying to get back to where they were before. They were trying to push that thing back, and then it's almost like, fuck you, let's stop trying to go back and move forward. But maybe in a bad way, maybe in a good way. That's my overall episode impressions. I think a great episode. I think there's some great acting. Surprisingly from Gomez. I think Gomez did a really good job here. I think the police chief did really good. Well, of course, always amazing. Skylar, I think she did well. I mean, everyone did a great job. I think maybe the only person I didn't like acting in here was maybe Carmen. I think she was kind of iffy with her display. But I want to get your general thoughts here, Meter.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've said this was a setup episode for the last like at least two, if not, I think this is at least the third episode in a row we've said that. So I mean, all of them can't be setup episodes, right?
No, that's true. That's true. I mean, no, I think the last one we said was kind of a payoff to a lot of things. But I guess
Maybe.
maybe setup isn't the right term, but maybe it's a build episode,
Hmm.
right? Because I feel like they're building to something here, right?
Hmm.
Something greater, but they haven't gotten there yet. And the thing that they're building to is something with the twins, something with Gus, and this whole kind of like trio, essentially, Gus, Walt, and then maybe the Walt's family to some degree.
You know what it kind of feels like? And this is, this is an overall impression that kind of jumps the gun, but it feels like Walter died and the world, like, this is what would have happened, like how the world would have continued forward without him, except he's still physically here. Like, he's supposed to be dead right now.
Hmm. Let me think about that here. What would you have to support that?
His wife moved on romantically.
Hmm.
His protege has taken his place. Hank is unaffected by Walt right now because Hank has nothing to do with Walt. Like, all of the meth right now is from Jesse, not from Walt.
Hmm.
He doesn't work at the school anymore. He just kind of exists. Like, he doesn't take care of his children.
Hmm.
He pretty much is dead. Like, he broke. He's not getting money funneled in anymore through the website. He doesn't work with the lawyer anymore, with Saul anymore. Like,
Hmm.
it's as if he died. He should have been dead, pretty much.
Right. I can see that, at least with all the relationships that are important to him. Because, yeah, his relationship was dead with Jesse. Like, that was just completely not there. It's already not been there with Skylar. And it's also kind of funny because their dynamic is pretending like they are, not that they're just fine, but kind of pretending like they don't exist. Or,
Maybe this episode was the finalization of the what should have been the death of Walter White.
yeah. It's also kind of like we've been talking about how we're moving these chess pieces. I feel like this is the final position for these chess pieces. No, not to say that, or how do you say it? Like in chess, you have like the opening, then you have like the middle game, then you have like the end game. I feel like this is setting up. This is the end of the opening, and now we're in the mid game. So this is how all the strategies will kind of be used against each other. So maybe that's the analogy there. But yeah, so Skylar, Walt Jr., I mean, he's there, right? But,
No, he doesn't need his dad. He's got Lewis.
he's got Lewis. And I will come back here. You made a joke. That was amazing. It was great.
I just liked how quick I was. Like, it was a very good, quick joke, and there was no reaction from you. I was like, man, I thought for sure they'd get him.
It took me, well, it's one of those times where I was processing like what was going on the screen, and I just couldn't multitask.
That's fair.
But the joke, for people who missed it,
Oh,
was
it'll
that
be way better now.
Lewis was at the doctor's. What doctor? Walt's doctor. Two of the best characters on the show together at once.
Man, I didn't think you got the joke, but sure did.
Yeah, and let me just tell you how funny it was. Jeez. Now that sounded like mean.
That funny? Oh, I thought you were. I thought you were doing. This is how funny it was. Then you laugh.
Well,
the equivalent amount of how funny it was.
Okay, I was gonna do something like that, but then I'm like, that sounds really patronizing. No, it was a good joke.
This whole thing is patronizing.
Is
It's
it?
totally fine. It's totally fine.
Oh,
So,
no.
where do we start?
I say we start with Lewis and the doc. No, let's start with we'll do Hank first.
Okay.
So Hank is essentially, he's at a standstill, but he's also trying to move forward. I think he's paralleled a lot with Walt here, because Hank's trying to stay like how things used to be, and keeps trying to go back on what's kind of pushing forward. And he's trying to pretend like nothing's wrong. And there's a lot of similarities where how there's just a lack of communication about how Hank feels. And people are reaching out to him. Like, they're trying to do it the best way and not insult his pride or anything. And unfortunately, they're kind of letting him slip under the radar. Like I don't know if that's just the profession or what it is exactly, but, like they know Hank's hurting, but they are, I guess, respecting his decision, or maybe they're understanding he can't be reasoned with. I don't know what exactly, but he keeps trying to push forward, and he's really does not want to go to El Paso, but he can't admit it to like anybody. Essentially, I mean, he does at the end there, but then he smuggles in the lie, and the lie becomes complicit to some degree, or maybe it's not complicit, but it's kind of like, I know, but what's not. It's hard to say exactly. So I think that's a lot of Hank here, and Hank's kind of going out of the limb. What's kind of funny about this is that Hank going out of the limb, he's actually like right on the money, but it is just very like circumstantial and happenstance. Like in any other situation, you'd be like, Hank, you're grasping at straws here, but it seems like he's got a decent case and he's built it up.
I mean, I don't think he is grasping it. I mean, he's grasping at straws in comparison to the size of the calling that he has. He's being called to bust way bigger things and do way bigger things in a bigger territory. He said El Paso's like the Super Bowl for him, but he is choosing to continue to play in the minor leagues when he literally has a chance at the Super Bowl, and using this as an excuse. But to be fair, he is really, really good at what he does right now.
Yeah.
And he was not very good at El Paso. When we saw him there, he was very out of his element. He struggled, and he got dumb luck that he wasn't killed. He probably should have been dead. And I think he recognizes all of that and wants to stay where it's safer and more comfortable, and where he knows that he's good at what he does. And that's the thing, right? Growth is painful. Growth is uncomfortable. And he doesn't want to face that. He wants to do this. But he's really good at tracking down, taking a teenth and turning it into a bigger thing. Like, he's literally has only 26 trailers or whatever that he needs to look at.
Right. I'll say that he maybe was going more out on a limb, like initially, but once he found that trailer connection, like that's where he had a case there. Like, I feel like if he came to the sheriff and started, going on about this tink he found, the sheriff would be like, Hank, it's probably just an old badge. Like, there'd be plenty of other explanations, i.e. what Gomez said. But with the whole trailer connection and him finding all these different leads, I think that definitely shows he does have a case. And, we know from a perspective of watching, like, he's always had a case here. Like, he has that nose. But where this is very interesting plot-wise is that Hank's not trying to be a hero here, or it's almost like he's doing this just out of spite, or not out of spite. He's doing this as a way to avoid going to El Paso.
For sure.
He's not doing this because he cares that. I'm sure he cares in some degree, right? It is interesting. He does want to solve this case, partly because of pride, but I think mostly it's just a mechanism for him to not go to El Paso. And I think that's interesting plot wise, because it would be maybe a little less strong if it was just like, I need to find Heisenberg. Like, that's super dramatic, but that's not something the character would do necessarily. I mean, until maybe we get to a later point potentially, but I just think that's an interesting plot dynamic to have in there.
It is interesting that he calls it the case Heisenberg, like, he does say, I want to catch Heisenberg at one point to Gomez, or to the sheriff, or you call him the sheriff, I think it's a captain, but either way, like, and then their response is like the blue meth, like, kind of bringing it back to be like, you don't even know that this is the same guy. But Hank has some sort of intuition here that he wouldn't otherwise have. To your point, where he couldn't have gone to his boss any sooner, he ducked his boss's call until he had something to bring to him, to be like, listen, I've taken this tiny thing and I've made it bigger. Take a look. And it still wasn't super convincing. But to me, like, that was crazy impressive. But all the more reason why he should be in El Paso. Like, if anything, he's kind of building a case against himself by building a case for himself.
So that's why he ignored his boss? Okay. Because I could see that.
He wasn't ready to have that conversation.
Oh, I see. The way I was interpreting it is he was just kind of shutting down, which maybe did a little bit of that too, but...
I think he was going to try and finish. Well, I think definitely. I think he was trying to get through that list and get literally anything. And that's why he pushed so hard on that girl. That's why he was like, if that's working, literally, it's my golden ticket. I'll have the guy's face. Like, he has everything. Like, he was looking for anything. And the fact that he even thought of the ATM was amazing. Like, brilliant detective work. So, and just to draw a minor parallel here, I think it's kind of similar to Jesse's situation, which is ironic. But because Jesse also, nobody would have believed him if he said, I can cook just like him, until he had the thing. He needed something to present in order to actually have people believe in him. And that's what Hank wanted, but Hank didn't come to this to quite good enough. Not like Jesse. Jesse made a blue product.
Yeah. Do you think we should go to Jesse first or next? Or actually, let me just think if there's anything with the Hank storyline that any other. I don't
You
think
could
there
touch
is.
on her. You could touch on Marie. Because they had a brief conversation, which is kind of telling.
Yeah, Marie is not having any of this. She's definitely worried, and she has, I think she knows what's going on. I think a relationship with Marie is really difficult with feeling wise because Marie's kind of very deflective too, and she sees that Hank has like the bruise on his forehead or whatever over his eye, and I think she knows what's going on, but she can't call him out on it for some reason. I mean, she's like going under. She's throwing jabs underneath the table, but she's not willing to do it, above table.
Yeah, I mean, I think neither of them want him to go, and they kind of have a meta conversation because the words they say and what they're actually saying are all have undercurrents to it, to the actual conversation they're having, which is Marie's saying, I don't want you to go. And I know you don't want to go. And Hank saying, I know, but there's nothing I can do. Like, what am I going to do about it?
I see. That would make sense because there did seem to be an understanding there, but I guess they just couldn't put it just fully on display.
I think they're very good at speaking in denial. And we've seen that, right? Marie is very good at denial.
I wonder if that's partly what makes them a good couple, or maybe not a good couple, but makes them a couple in some ways. They can both understand each other's language to some degree. Because Hank is very much about perception. Hank's not an outright liar, but he's a liar insofar as how he throws out how he wants to be perceived. Or Hank is like the definition of fake it until you make it. Now, with that said, he's got legit skills and he's got legit things he does, but he's very good at the political side of things, of trying to like spin things to people's perception of him. If they think he's awesome because of this thing, yeah, sure, I'll let them blow it up my ass.
Yeah, and I think at the end of last episode, we had said, well, maybe part of the reason that Hank is so hesitant is because Marie wants him to go so bad. She's always talked about DC, and that's a line that he says at some point. But I think that this conversation kind of cemented that no, she is as scared for Hank as Hank is.
Yeah. I think it's got to be after what happened with the digital trip, and he doesn't really run into the issues here in wherever they are. I forget where it is.
Yeah. Albuquerque.
Is that where it is? Albuquerque, New Mexico. I gotta remember that.
Yeah, just remember it's the Weird Al song.
Albuquerque. I've heard that before. I just don't remember it. So next up, let's go to Jesse. Would probably be too much there. Maybe Skylar. What do you think?
Okay.
So give me a little bit about Skylar.
So Skylar's whole thing right now is that she's having sex with Ted, her boss. And this episode, all of that kind of blows up in her face. And she's kind of been dragged down by her actions there. But Ted doesn't seem to fucking care. Ted's like, oh, this is all working out in my favor.
How did it blow up in her face? I mean, I can come up with some stuff here, but I just want to...
Well, now there's hostility at her house, which has made it a very uncomfortable place to live. Which isn't only that, but it is a part of it. There's Walt showing up at her work, so now everybody in the office knows she's sleeping with Ted. So now there's uncomfortableness with all of her coworkers. Like literally everybody in the world doesn't like her except for Ted.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a point where Ted was trying to, like, oh, where did Walt go wrong? I want to make sure I don't like repeat that. And
Yeah.
obviously there are some big differences between the two, and that, Ted told the truth. That's one big difference. But I feel like this is very much a situation where she made her bed and now she's sleeping in it. And I feel like so the other plot lines are kind of like about trying to stop or trying to like move forward. And I think Skylar's plot line right now is about where she arrived. She's like, this is where she is, and now this is where she's having to be, because she didn't think of the consequences too much. You're right. She fucked Ted out of spite, and then that just completely blew up in her face. And I feel like there's probably something going on with that copying machine that was kind of flashing her. I'm not sure what the metaphor there was, but the office doesn't like her.
Maybe it's the fight club thing where in that movie there's a scene with a copier, and he's like, every day feels like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Just kind of saying like, A, it's repetitive, and B, it's like so reduced from its original form of a thing. So her life is kind of like backed up a whole bunch.
So that could be a reference, but also a metaphor too, drawing on it. And what was weird about that too, I think that what's credence to your idea there is also that I think after that scene, she slept with Ted again.
Yeah.
Like I didn't expect that. I thought she would just be like, okay, enough of this. But she keeps doing the same things, and yeah, it is just like a copy of what happened before. She doesn't know what else to do.
I mean, does she have any reason not to?
At this point, no.
It's the only thing that's getting to Walt. It really pisses him off, and she fucking loves that.
Yeah, and they had a fight at one point where they're both kind of screaming at each other like, "You fucked it!" Da, 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 da. I'm sure there's more details there, but it just kind of sounded like yelling. And I don't think there's any big plot points. Can you correct me if I'm wrong?
I think she pretty much said she did it out of spite. I don't remember the exact wording, but I'm pretty sure there was wording in there where she was just like, "Yeah, I did it literally just to make you mad." Other than that, no. I think just the fact that they were fighting. Well, the other plot point was she was like, "Okay, suit yourself," and he's like, "I will," to his face, and then like that pissed him off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. And then he comes in there. He's like, "Fuck you!" And then okay. Maybe we should. No, I'm just gonna talk about it now. So there's the scene where Walt's like talking to Ted, and then there's like the blinds there. Obviously, like a little bit of the jail metaphor again. And then Ted's just hanging out behind the window. His window is like he has like the wire frame in it, which is kind of funny. Like, what is he preparing for? Obviously, this moment. Like, and then Walt's like, "Well, guess what? I'm gonna break in anyway. We gotta talk man to man." And he's like drags this potted plant over in the least like epic way possible. And Skylar's like, "Walt, what are you doing?" I'm gonna talk to Ted. What does it look like I'm doing? And surprisingly, he gets it up and tosses it and just bounces right back. And sure, there's probably something in there too, but that was just a funny scene.
Yeah. I mean, that whole, like, I think that's the weight of the situation on Walt, and the weight of the situation on Ted is he's just like standing there, and everything that happens just kind of bounces off him. Like, he seems completely unfazed by it all.
Yeah, he really doesn't seem to give a fuck.
I think that whole thing was just kind of a metaphor for the emotional situation between them all.
Yeah. What is up with Ted? He's so weird. And like he's so ordinary, and I like see his personality in so many places, but he's just like
he's just Ted.
I feel like there could be a fire at his place and he'd be like, what are you supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah.
And do we see anything else from Skylar? So she's just getting blowback, but that's pretty much most of what we have from Skylar. Blowback, and she's just very, very annoyed, but still repeating the past, essentially, or she's not making any changes. I still don't see the reason for her to stay with Ted other than to piss off Walt. Maybe that's where I'm confused. Like, what's the motivation besides just repeating the past?
I don't know. I don't know if she even necessarily knows. I mean, having sex with somebody feels good, so there's probably an aspect there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also some similarities there between Hank and Skylar, because they're both don't want to progress forward with their current situation, but aren't willing to admit it. Because Ted has all of these reasons, well, I can solve literally every problem you have, and she's just keeps coming up with other ones, and she's kind of shaky about it, and she's just pretty much yeah, but no, this isn't it seems very clear she doesn't feel like this is a long-term thing. This is just a how things are right now thing.
Yeah, you're right about that. They're both resisting kind of moving forward. And also, it would be a little bit icky feeling if the solution to Skylar's problem right now was money, essentially. And let's just say Ted's money, right? Because that's kind of what he kind of is at the moment, at least as far as offering a place, offering all this stuff. I don't think she is attached to him that much, besides just for a purposes revenge. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think she cares about him.
Mm-hmm.
And she would just essentially using him for his money, and that would kind of throw in the dynamic with Walt, because if she accepted money from Walt, she'd feel dirty about it, because it kind of had some sort of similarity there, and there are similarities between the characters, so she probably doesn't feel right kind of accepting that in any way.
Mm-hmm.
She'd rather live in that hell. But okay, I think we're running out of stuff on Skylar.
Yep.
So going next, let's talk about with Walt.
Mm-hmm.
His story definitely is staying in the past, trying to go backwards, but also just, I don't know, he's just frozen, right? He's not doing much, and he's acting very, very cringy. Maybe not as cringy as an episode or two ago, but kind of in that same level.
Yeah, I mean, he's totally disassociated. It's almost like he's a ghost. That's how it feels to me. I'll keep coming back to that.
I think that's right, and maybe that's worse for him in a way, right? Because I think one of his big issues early on in the series was his lack of control. But now it's is control even applicable?
I mean, what does he have right now?
He doesn't really have anything. I can't think.
Without his family, money means money means nothing to him. Family's what matters to him. And he lost his family in the pursuit of money to support his family for when he dies, but then he didn't die. So they don't have the money. They do have him, but he had taken massive measures for the opposite. So now they have neither, really.
Yeah. He's like a ghost. He I feel like the ways he's affecting things is very, very minor too. Or I don't know. At this point, the most control he could get out of his life, or most meaning, would be complaining about how this chicken place that he goes to raised the price by about 3 cents. That's about the most level of significance he could have in this world at the moment.
Yeah.
And so he's just dissociating all at work. He's not teaching, and Carmen comes in, and Carmen's very concerned. And she's like, hey, Walt, we got to talk. And Carmen's trying to, help him out a little bit, but maybe trying to have a conversation, read through the lines. Bitch, come on. And then Walt decides, oh, I know what to do. Let's get revenge back on Skylar. I'm going to sleep with Carmen. my boss. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't go well. Carmen's like, "What? What are you doing?" And the way she played it was like as if she thought Walt had something physically wrong with him or something.
Right.
Like it's just kind of an awkward kind of thing to portray. I think. Like I didn't really buy the performance there because maybe it's just something that's really hard to perform. Because the question is, why didn't Carmen obviously fired him after that, but it didn't go into like you're sexually demented or something like that, or what the fuck are you doing? It's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like almost as if someone had a brain tumor and started acting against their will.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption for her to make. How long has she known Walt? How long has he worked there?
At least 10 years, I think, right?
I mean, as far as we know, probably significantly longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, she's known him, let's say, for a decade. And he's always been this mild-mannered guy. He gets cancer, comes back, and all of a sudden he's acting different. Like, is it unreasonable for her to think this is a medical thing?
Hmm. Yeah, when you put it that way, it seems like maybe it's going a little too hard on it.
And they were friends. Like, remember the first time she had a conversation with him where you were like, oh, it seems like she's almost coming on to him.
Uh-huh.
And like the whole feeling there was like they are really good friends who respect each other. Obviously, he's way overqualified to be there. So like, I think she respects him as an employee and as a person, and just genuinely is concerned that something is medically wrong with him. And we've seen him disassociate before, and typically has been when something has medically been wrong with him,
Hmm.
or
Okay.
medically right with him when he was told the cancer was gone.
So, okay. I think you're right about that because I didn't get that kind of full context there, but if you put in that context, then kind of that, like, yeah, it would make sense for her to be like what is going on here? Like, I knew you for all this time. This is not something you'd ever do. Like it's not like what's wrong with you. It's kind of like what's wrong with you. Like
Yeah.
just more kind of curiosity in a way, but also kind of like probably too far gone to save at this point.
And I mean, she does say the first thing she says when Walt tries to kiss her is like, "Do you need me to call Skylar?" It's just it was like a very not subtle. You're married, like
Yeah, and I don't think she was aware of that shit, obviously. So that probably made it worse on her end. Triggered the Walt machine,
yeah,
and so from there, he's bringing his stuff out, and then we have above his head science, and we see Jesse, and Jesse's like, "Hey man, come over here," and then Jesse is showing Walt some product and kind of Jesse's just trying to essentially get information about Gus because Jesse wants to sell his load, and he does not really care much about Walt here. Again, going back to your ghost point, like it's like to Jesse, Walt's kind of dead at the moment, and Walt tries to talk to him like a son, and he sees the product, and Walt's just acting very strangely about it. Like Jesse just keeps looking around, just like, what are you doing? Like he's just being way too obvious, and Walt tries to regain, I think, some of his pride by talking down Jesse, but I think it was less than that. I think it was more like Walt just needed somebody to need him. And it's like Walt wasn't even aware he wasn't needed. Like he tried to use the same old tricks he used on Jesse before, and I think the tricks before were perfect because the quality of the meth wasn't good. But Jesse kind of just showed he noticed stuff that his product was good. Jesse did seem to be like he was a bit like questioning himself towards the end, but he was also kind of like I don't know, skeptical of Walt a little bit. And Walt just kept on pushing further, and then I think there came a realization with Walt where he's like, he doesn't need me, and I think that's kind of interesting. What's your take on that?
very different than yours.
Oh, really?
I did not read it as Jesse doesn't care about Walt. I read it as Jesse was there for two reasons. One was to try and get the connection, but he could have gone to Saul for the connection. He didn't need to go to Walt. He went to Walt because he wanted Walt's approval.
Ah.
And that's why he showed him the product in the first place. And why when Walt was like, uh, this is inferior product, whatever, he was like, what are you talking about? Like, it kind of seemed to me like he was like, I thought you'd be proud of me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was hurt that Walt was like offended by the fact that Jesse didn't need him pretty much. And I think that's when Jesse realized, he's like, oh, you're here mentally. Like, you're not, like, you're fucked right now.
So that's much better reading. And I think that also kind of shows like a head-to-head sort of pride thing. Because Jesse was there to essentially instill his pride. He wanted Walt to say, I'm proud of you, son. And, did have a hug or something. And then Walt got insulted there because it was a blow to his pride. I think there's two things. I think the first thing is this probably calls back to whatever happened with Gray Matter. I think he still has bitterness about that. We don't know exactly what happened, but that's what I'm guessing.
I think that's a really fair assumption.
Yeah. And then the second thing is that, Walt thought he was so fucking special because this is my math. This is what I made. There's nothing else like it. And then Jesse makes it. Wait.
Jesse, who he sees as this dumb fuck up who can't do anything right, makes his product. He does point out some things that seem like they were legitimate. Like he said, it's cloudy, so you had trouble with the distillation process or whatever. And just it's like, you know what, fuck you. But I think that was like, yeah, he's right. Like, it's not as good. I think Jesse understands it's not as good. I don't think he was looking to be as good as Walt. I think he just wanted to have the approval of somebody that he sees as a father,
Yeah.
that he sees as a father, a friend. But I think Walt just has no respect for Jesse, and that was the most insulting thing for Walt is this guy I have no respect for can do the same thing as me. That is disgusting. Especially when Jesse's like, he's like, no, you're good at lots of things. He's like, okay, what? He's like, you still sober? So blatant.
Oh, geez. That probably hurt Jesse pretty hard.
I mean, he seemed to move on from it pretty quick because I think he has that self-esteem already.
That's true. And I do agree with you. I think Walt was pointing out some stuff that was definitely wrong with that match. But I think maybe Jesse understood it more as like maybe these are things that are faults, but it's kind of like nitpicking a little bit. Like you give someone like a really good draft for like, I don't know, an essay or something. And then they like say, oh, hey, this is wrong. This is the wrong use of whom. And this is the wrong use of this. And like, just fuck you. It's just like,
it's like getting a 90 versus a 91 on a test and being like berated for it. It's like, dude, whatever.
Yeah. And Walt was calling Jesse out on chemistry stuff. And, Jesse was completely like, dude, I used this. Like Jesse, I don't know when Jesse started studying this shit, but, he's become pretty decent with it seems.
I think because he said, just like you taught me to Walt, I think he saw what they were doing differently than Walt saw it. Walt saw Jesse as just like this helper who sold drugs and was like an inroad. And Jesse saw this as like a mentor teaching him a skill and wanting him to also be good at the skill. And that is offensive to Walt.
That's interesting.
Because Walt's special. Nobody can do what Walt does.
Yeah. Ends up that's not right.
Everybody needs Walter.
Everybody. I mean, especially me.
He's got nobody.
There's also this little point here where he put the box of stuff on top of the car. Yeah. And it's a minor point here, but that was just kind of interesting because Walt had no intention of like, moving on. He just wanted to stay right put and keep things the way they were. And he kind of like bullied Jesse into staying there. Like he planned ahead right there. That was a little bit manipulative. And then Jesse's like, "Hey, man, let's go drive somewhere." Obviously indicating, let's move on and just a small point there, but I think that was kind of cool, plot wise.
Yeah. It also dumped out his whole, this is his work that he's at, and then all his work was put into that box, and then Jesse driving away kind of, destroyed that as well. It spilled his other job all over the pavement. So he had to repack his job in theory. And finally, there was a framed picture of his family that shattered. So he had a broken glass around the picture of his family that was laying on the ground.
Yeah.
Which we also saw used back when Skylar and Walt first started having trouble. Skylar had a cracked photo of the family on her desk.
Yeah. That's interesting. So that's kind of like a parallel between the two.
Yeah. And it's a pretty literal metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I'll add here real quick is something you said was kind of cool. Like you're talking about how like Walt's work was in that box. And I think in a way we can say that Jesse was dragging him off with his work, like literally.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened with Gray Matter. That's kind of what's happening here. Of course, it falls out and, shambles and everything. But, I think that is a pretty apt metaphor.
How differently do you think it would have gone if Walt had just been like, wow, you really learned a lot. Like, I'm super proud of you. Like, this is really cool. I feel like because Jesse was like, I was going to cut you in. So, like, Jesse had already thought, like, I still owe you something. I at minimum owe you this conversation. But he was going to like be paying him for using his formula pretty much. Walt didn't have to do any work. He just could sit back and take passive income. And that offended Walt. But like if Walt had a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah. I think, let's see. I think Jesse would have been like, you like it? And it's like, wow, Jesse, this is amazing. You've come so far. I can see like a couple of things here or there, but this is incredible. Like we could, make a couple tweaks here or there. We could get something even better than we had before. I think that might be Walt in a good point of view or a good place. I think he would have that pride because I think one thing he's had pride in is his family to some degree, and I think that would be pride in his family and also pride in himself because he taught Jesse this, right? And maybe that's what Walt's missing here. He could have pride in Jesse, but he chose not to.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a bigger thing for Walt. Walt has done a lot of things, a lot of good things, but if it's not his version of what he should be prideful of, like he doesn't care. Let's just for another example take Junior, who makes this entire website to help raise money for his dad. Like that could be a really nice moment of, wow, I've instilled these values in my son and we have this bond together and like he made this whole thing. Like that's a big deal, especially back then before, your Squarespace and all of that, which makes it super easy now, not sponsored. But actually maybe we should be. But my point being, there are things that he does that he could take credit for and be prideful about that if he doesn't think there's reason to be prideful, he doesn't accept it.
This will be interesting to see, going forward because I think it's a plot point that's been there, but this hasn't been uncovered until this point.
Kind of can't see the forest through the trees,
And then, so beyond that plot line, I think we can kind of go to like the Saul sort of thing. So the cleaner kind of sees Walt being crazy. And then he essentially, actually, no, it's before that. So Walt goes to Saul. I forget what happened exactly. Walt goes to Saul or something. They have an argument. They kind of break off the relationship. That's a bad sign because I think Saul he's not the only thing keeping Walt safe at the moment, but he's a big factor in keeping Walt safe. Because Walt is so erratic right now. Saul just wants to see Walt get back in business. But Walt just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, the timeline-wise, the first thing that happens is their cleaner and Saul are listening to the tape.
That's right.
And then Saul's like, is this a good thing or a bad thing that they're fighting? And then Walt's like, I'm going to go punch Ted. And Saul's like, it's a bad thing. So he sends the cleaner to go intercept him. cleaner, because Walt was going to go back in through a back door, which goes directly into you could make the assumption goes directly into Ted's office. So Walt sees it, starts heading towards it, and then the car comes and intercepts him, and Mike throws him in the back and takes him to Saul. And that's when he's like, How'd you know I was going to be there? How'd you know what was going on?
Mm-hmm.
And finds out that his place was bugged.
Yeah, that's completely right. And Saul was definitely in the back foot there. I feel like, so this is a prediction I've made. I'm just going to make it again. So Saul has bugged Skylar and Walt's house. Mm-hmm. Now there's Skylar and Ted or Skylar knows about the whole thing with Saul. Or she doesn't know a thing about with Saul, but she knows the whole meth thing, right? Mm-hmm. And Saul has a financial interest right now to keep that all under wraps and under lid. Mm-hmm. So I think we have plenty of impetus now for Saul to bug Ted's house. And I think there's obviously something that can be done there as far as Ted being a financial fraud, mm-hmm. and Skylar being implicated in that as well, because she's been signing off on the shit. And so I think any investigation would kind of find them there. And that might be a good way to get, her and Ted out of the picture, I think, plot-wise.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, so they have a big blow-up, Walt and Saul, and he even gets to a fight with Saul, which is kind of funny to watch. Mm-hmm. I think Saul's trying hard here, but he's a little too desperate. Or maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's like desperate times for desperate measures, but these measures just can't contain Walt. And he's just struggling to get into a fist fight. The cleaner's just like, I'm done with this shit. Mm-hmm. And takes care of things, puts him back. And then I think at that point, the cleaner kind of, as he's seeing Walt off, he sees like the left side, essentially. And I think the cleaner sees him writing on the wall. He's kind of a little bit like, oh shit, this isn't going very well. And kind of tells Walt, hey, you're making your bed right now. You're going to be sleeping in it pretty soon. And Walt doesn't quite get the hint. And then we find out that the cleaner is having some sort of interaction with Gus. So, mm-hmm. and the cleaner is trying to keep Saul out of this whole thing. So the cleaner has some different financial motives. And I thought he was under Saul, but it's been pretty well established he's not. He's his own entity.
I think the pieces that can logically be put together now are Saul had originally told Walt and Jesse, I know a guy who knows a guy. The cleaner is the guy.
Ah.
So the cleaner works with Gus and also works with, I think he's his own entity, also works with Saul, but his primary is Gus because he gives Gus all of this info and tells Gus, by the way, Jesse wants in. So he is that connect. And then, but when Gus he says, should the lawyer know? And Gus says, no. And he's like, okay. So he's taking orders from Gus and also working with Saul.
Yeah, because Gus is probably bigger money than Saul offers.
I'd imagine so, because Saul's a small, criminal lawyer, and Gus has a multinational business with the chicken thing. Plus, we've seen his distribution goes way outside of Texas, even. Yeah, you're right, and smart enough to distribute the meth in a certain kind of way. Yeah. And you're right. Like, Gus is very, very careful here, and they're analyzing Walt's life essentially, and it's not looking so good. Yep. And Gus's reaction here was kind of interesting because Gus is kind of like, "This is a bad investment," or "This is my investment kind of going belly up right now. Like, I need some money here." And I've had this idea that Gus wouldn't be opposed to kind of essentially indicting Walt as a slave to make meth, because it's kind of what it sounded like. Like Walt essentially here was cattle, right? And you do what you do to get your meat or milk out of this thing, and that was kind of how I was seeing Gus. And then
Gus had some sort of intuition there that there was a way to get Walt back in the game through Jesse. He wasn't going to accept Jesse's meth, but then he saw something there. And obviously later, the opportunity he saw was to buy Jesse's meth and get Walt half the money, and then try to get Walt back into it through Green.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really cool, just to wrap up the cleaner, that we have a character that's like fairly well fleshed out. I enjoy seeing him on screen. Still don't know his name.
Oh, yeah. I think I should know his name because it kind of got leaked to me when I was looking at the character review. But yeah, but
I don't use it. I know it. I don't use it because I assume it hasn't been dropped yet in the show. So I'm not trying to spoil anything.
Yeah, in the cleaner, I think we talked about him in the character ranking, but he's definitely a very good character, like, for what he is. It's kind of, I don't think he's up to Marie level, but he's actually pretty close there. Like, he's somehow vital, but also completely, like, not needed is not the right word. He's like a background character that makes everything like pop out.
You know what's really nice in season 3 versus season 1, and I know we're getting a little bit off, and maybe we should save some of this, but the fact that now we're seeing a bunch of characters that aren't inept. Like, we saw, like, season 1, it was a bunch of, like, you know, scrubby people trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and everybody vying for position. And now we're seeing a bunch of people who are just really fucking good at what they do. Gus, Saul, Cleaner, like, these people are really good at what they do. Even Hank right now, really good at what he does. And how Walton and Jesse interact with those situations. But it's kind of refreshing. I like seeing these people on screen a little bit more.
I think that's true. I think one problem, maybe not a problem, one thing that I kind of saw happening a little bit with season 1, season 2, was that I kept on building up Walt in my mind as being like this amazing person, and then like he just kept on like falling down as far as like expectations go, because Walt is really smart, but everything it does is kind of dumb. Like, he hasn't had like a very good play in quite some time. Like, the best thing he's done is make, you know, really good math, and he hasn't done anything beyond that. He hasn't even like come up with a good scheme.
Well, getting back home was a pretty good one. That was a pretty strong play.
Fugue state?
Well, the fugue state, but no. Beyond that, like his calling Skylar's bluff.
Oh, okay. See, that was Walt definitely being a little bit badass there.
That was a strong play.
I think mostly what we've seen is Walt just kind of falter. Jesse's been kind of, actually Jesse's up on the rise right now. He's actually playing very strong, but definitely in season 1, season 2, or let's go to like mid season 2. It's true, there weren't really that many competent characters, or the most competent character was Walt, but then you kept on seeing him fail. So I think we needed some competence in there to kind of bring the story. You start losing a little bit of that realism or stakes or something like that. You know, how is it possible that Walt's getting away with this? Well, now he's not. Now death's at his door.
Pretty much.
So towards the end there, Walt gets thrown the money, and it's his half. So this is a very interesting play by Gus, because Gus, he's okay. We may maybe not take it literal here, but Jesse said, you know, this is, you know, this is only half, and we assume the other half's going to Walt, like 100%. So Gus is making quite the play here, and Walt might be smart enough to figure out where this money came from, because he knows Jesse had a batch. So he might assume Jesse was cutting him in or something like that. But I think Gus's play right here is to essentially get Walt to cook back, or start cooking through Jesse. And through money too, right? Money symbolizes two things. It's green, means go, but it also means, you know, just cha-ching, cha-ching. And that's kind of interesting to see. What's your thoughts? I think there's maybe not too much there, but...
No, there's not. I think everything you're saying, you have reason to feel that way. And I think it's super fair assumptions. And if that's the case, it's a pretty strong play by Gus. Really good read on people that he barely knows, but maybe he has a has a way of reading people, and kind of gets Walt.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the second time we've seen that character, the one who delivered the drugs, or picked up the drugs and delivered the money. The other time we saw him was when Cleaner called Gus. He called this guy, and this guy gave the message to Gus at the laundromat.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was that same guy.
Hmm. He kind of looked a little bit familiar to the guy that said where Walt should meet them too at Poyos, maybe, but maybe it's a different guy.
Yeah, nope, same guy.
Okay, cool. Okay,
Which is cool because we know that Gus has some people that if he trusts somebody, he uses that same person over and over. So maybe Gus is kind of a creature of habit in that way. Because we see Cleaner and we see Communicator. I don't know what we would call this guy. This is kind of like a henchman, but he's a key henchman, clearly.
So moving on to the last character. I can't think of any other minor characters right now, but we have Jesse. I think kind of what I was saying before is Jesse was on the decline in season 2, and now he's definitely on the up and up.
Yep.
And he's got like a lot more confidence, and in a fucked up kind of way. I think the confidence comes from him realizing who he is and not being afraid to back down from that. Like he's realized his balls are huge, and he's willing to put them on the table for everyone to see.
So you're talking about the scene when he's buying gas.
Yeah, pretty much. But other places too. Like he's willing to put himself out to Saul and put himself out to Walt. He's kind of doing these big moves here, which I don't think he would have done in season 1 at all. Like he would have had too much trepidation there. But here he's approaching it with like a lot of like oomph.
Yeah.
So the first scene we kind of see is he is at a gas station. This is after he made his meth, so he must have just been out and ran out of gas, kind of similar to how they ran out of gas before, or what happened there. I forget exactly. I don't know. They got stranded at one point for some reason.
Well, that was because their battery died.
Okay. Similar sort of thing. He's out of gas probably because he was running the truck all day and stuff. And so he essentially spots this girl. Somehow he figures in a similar sort of way, Hank, he gets a read on her that she'd be willing to, interact with meth. And he starts essentially just trying to get out of paying for this stuff. And I guess it's because he doesn't have any money, right? He's out of money.
I don't know. Maybe.
He's just trying to get his product out there.
Maybe he's just was just testing the waters. Saw an opportunity and took it.
Okay. I could definitely buy he doesn't have a card. I could buy that maybe he didn't bring his cash on him, didn't think about that. I feel like he would, right? Maybe he's trying not to like throw his money. I don't know. But he goes on a limb here and tries to just, buy her off some meth. It ends up working. I think he's also being kind of flirtatious too.
Oh, for sure. He's using his sex appeal. No doubt. And
it works pretty well. This girl was very concerned about her dad. And he just kind of like, he does a very good job of convincing her into taking it. And then the cops right behind him, and he does not care at all. And we see him just kind of push it forward. And then at that point, she's already a timid person. Like, if she's going to rat him out right there, what's she going to do? Kind of puts her in an awkward situation. So he played that very well.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of, sort of foreshadowing that the cops might be on his tail too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So where does the Jesse storyline go from there?
I mean, not very far. And I don't know if there's anything that we haven't talked about after that.
Let's see.
Because then he goes to Walt, and then he goes to Saul, and then he sells the drugs.
That's right. And then that's right. Okay, you're completely right about that. Because I was trying to think like where it would go. So he gets half, and he's kind of like disappointed by that.
Yeah.
He feels cheated, but I don't know what he's gonna draw from that conclusion wise. It's a little bit
Good
up in the air.
question. Yeah, I don't know.
Because is that going to be an assault to his pride, or does he feel cheated? It's probably quite a bit of money. I think he knows the product he made is good. I think that much is true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's definitely showing through in his pride. But I'm trying to think if there's any other little things with Jesse. I feel like I'm pulling at strings here today. There's plenty to discuss, but I think I'm trying to extract
Yeah.
too much.
No, I mean, we've had also, it's interesting because like a lot of the characters are so tied together that by talking about one storyline, we end up touching on others. And by the end, we've talked about Jesse's entire storyline by talking about everybody else's storyline and how he touches them. My biggest question for you with Jesse is, Walt asked about his using. Saul asked about his using. Gus has interest in if he's using or not. Jesse says he's clean. Is he, and or will he remain drug free?
I think so I would say yes, but there's one thing that keeps me from saying yes, and it's the fact that Walt threw a little bit of doubt to him when he was questioning Jesse's product, where he said like, what did people think? Or if people said I was awesome, and they're like, well, of course they did. They're junkies, they would just say anything's awesome because they got high, right? And I think Jesse may have taken from that like I should be testing my product to know how good it is.
Oh,
Like it might be like he needs to know what he's making because Walt has some sort of sense of chemical purity. He kind of like he has this ideal in his head he's comparing to, whereas I think Jesse he doesn't quite have that ideal, at least not yet. Like he knows what would be a good product, but not from like the look or the chemistry of it so much as like how it affects him. So I think that might be the only reason he gets back into it. I think it's a terrible reason. Maybe it's a little bit of a dual-layered reason because maybe he wants to get back to it in general. But I don't think he does really, though. I think he's like, I feel like he's kind of like a cheater right now who's on a hunt. Is kind of like seeing his meal and is kind of like getting ready to pounce on it, or that's what he's doing. And I don't think he would want to like get away from that because he's in predator mode. But
yeah.
I think he might get over cocky, and I think he might he get. I don't think he would do it. He'd do it purely as a business decision to take part in that meth, but I think it would backfire on him again.
Do you think what do you think the repercussions will be for Hank professionally and personally with him not going to El Paso? Because how do you think his boss will take that going forward, considering their conversation, Gomez, and how will Marie feel? Because at the end of Hank's story today, he pretty much told his boss, I can't go back. And then he like said, but it's only because of this. But I think they both knew that's not the real reason, obviously. But the chief was willing to be like, okay, I get it. That's fine. But how will that affect? And he snubbed really bad Gomez. How will that play?
So with Marie, I think Marie's going to be relieved, but I think she's going to be even more worried than if he went in a weird way.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's kind of like, like you took this big of a shock for your pride to avoid going. Like, this is really a problem. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of fucked up logic, but it kind of makes sense in some weird way. Then we have his work colleagues, and I think his work colleagues are going to think less of him, or maybe they're not going to think too much, but they're going to be kind of confused. And I think Hank's going to read a little bit too much into the lines. I think writing-wise, it's going to be a little bit more ambiguous, right? I don't think they're going to say one way or the other whether they care or not. I think Gomez will care a bit. I think maybe his boss will think a little bit, but I don't think everyone else is going to care that much. Like, oh, you decided to stay. Okay, great. But I think Hank's going to be reading into these little small cues and just kind of feeling like he let everybody down, essentially.
Hank's going to feel like he's under a microscope now.
Mm-hmm.
And will that translate to his ability to track this case? Because he's now tied everything to this case. He said, this is the reason I'm not going. So, like, let's say he cracks the case Like, would he go to El Paso at that point? Does he actually want to crack the case, or is he hoping it goes on forever so that he never has to go?
I don't think he's thought that far ahead.
That's a really fair point.
I think this was just like an all or nothing. I think he probably thinks he did enough damage anyway to not go to El Paso again.
Yeah.
Because like this was his chance, and you know, unless he does something crazy, like maybe he does figure out this Heisenberg stuff and cover something crazy, maybe that would make him try to like fight for him even more. Like we know we turned you down, but you know, come back to us. But it's probably just not as likely, just given that he snubbed them like pretty hard. Like he was supposed to be on the airplane and did not go.
Fair.
And then
Those were all of my follow-ups. Go ahead.
I just want to touch on Gomez here for a second because I don't think we talked about him.
Nope.
But Gomez has been like he's been like a background character for the most part. But I think we kind of see like an underlying character and some reaching out of humanity from him. And I kind of felt really bad when like you know, Gomez trying to help him, right? You know, like put his hand on his shoulder and everything. He's like, hey man, like let's talk or something. And Hank just shot him like in the heart, essentially. And it maybe I'm reading too much into this, but like somehow the character's expression barely changed, but that small little change you saw was like the difference between like okay and heartbreak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a great job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how you pull it off as an actor. Like I don't know. You take those two stills, do a difference of them, barely anything, but that's just 1% is what made it. And it does show that a lot of these actors here, like even if they're minor characters, they do a fucking great job selling everything.
Great acting, and I think that when everybody has great acting, that leads to the assumption that there's also great directing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the director is getting what he needs out of his actors or their actors. I'm not sure if I know Vance Gilligan did all of the writing. I think he did the directing, but no, there may have been sometimes shows have guests come in and direct for certain episodes and stuff.
I see. Yeah, that's a good point because the actor can only do so much as to like what they're directed to do, and if they're directed to do things that don't make sense for the character, like they're gonna not sell that role, essentially.
Well, sometimes actors can take and be like elevate the character beyond even what the director may be thinking. There's been instances of that I'm sure, you know, Walt kind of owns his character. You know, maybe there are times when he does that, but yeah, the director ultimately having a feel of this is what we need to get out of this scene and making it happen. Just such a well done show so far.
So I think we should do the green light here and move forward. So, hey guys,
okay.
Guess what?
Let me get my wallet.
Oh, wait, gonna throw money at me?
Yeah.
My stripper.
Where could I do that?
Oh, well, you can do that at paypepin.com, or sorry, that's not it. It's gonna be
That's one of them.
Okay, that's one of them. It's Pepin is here. What's it called?
Damn it, now I have to go buy another domain. You want more? Check it out at morepepin.com.
Morepepin.com. And then also, I am at pepinreacts.com, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's a long day. This is after work and everything, so you can see it's a million degrees in here. But also, you know, liking, subscribing, things you could do, ding, 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 you know what you want to do. I mean, you don't have to if you want. I'm not going to stop you. But more so, what I'm just excited for, you know, future-wise, is the guest coming up next week. Whether they'll be next week or next year for you guys, who knows? But, you know, the only way you can know is by waiting.
Tuning in.
Tuning in. Maybe I'll do these episodes out of order. Maybe you'll know ahead of this stuff.
That wouldn't make sense.
Anyway, I react. You react. We all react. Pepin reacts. Meader, say it.
I'm here too.
Yes.